Okay. Um, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for praying. Thank you for your love. As you know, I think I've already been introduced. I just wrote in my notes this morning, I should probably introduce myself in case you don't know who I am, but now you probably do. So I will start differently. I actually would start by just saying thank you. Thank you to this church. Thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit this morning. It's really a privilege. This church has really spoken so much into me. I'm going to talk today. I'm going to already ruin what I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to talk a little bit about sitting at a table and meeting with Jesus and that community. And this has been a community where I've met Jesus many times through this building, but through the people. And I'm just so thankful for this church and this community, because I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for you guys, for you all. So thank you, and I hope and pray that this can bless each one of us. So maybe I just start by just praying, and we can begin. So hey, Father God, I thank you so much for this opportunity we have just to talk today, just to hear about what you want to say, Lord. I just pray that you just bless and anoint what you want to say through my words today. And Holy Spirit, just speak to each one of us. Thank you that you love each one of us, that you set a table out in front of each one of us. And wherever we are at, you meet us. Holy Spirit, I just pray you just speak to us, whether we're here, present in the building, or we're online. Just bless us and speak to us now. Amen. Maybe I should have shaved.
It's either that or your beard, or you...
Should I not? I don't know how to hold it. I put it on my... just off. Okay. So, I have been given the title of Supper with Friends. So, we talked a little bit earlier about Luke 24:13 to 35, where God reveals himself in unexpected ways. I was really thinking about what sticks out to me. In this passage that was read, we see that Jesus comes back. He sees people who are losing hope, and he comes back for them. We see Jesus, he catches up to those two believers who are on the road to Emmaus. He sits down to eat bread with them at the table. He takes the bread, he blesses it, he breaks it, and then he disappears. And at that point, the believers' eyes are opened. The thing is, the believers didn't recognize Jesus. They didn't recognize him until he broke the bread. Jesus told him about himself. He explained himself, but they didn't recognize him until they were sitting at the table with him. In that moment. And I wanted to ask you, and I don't know, when we take a step back and you think about those believers, there's two groups of people. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more depth in a moment. But there's two groups of people. You have these believers who are part of Jesus' disciples. So Jesus has died. I think we all got that 2-3 weeks ago. And he then rose again. And we celebrated that at Easter. But then there's a group of disciples, the 11 who are still there, who have stayed there. But then there were these believers who were also following and part of the disciples, part of what Jesus had been building. And they'd started to lose hope. Like they started to actually walk away from where they were, and they started to go on this trip to Emmaus, whereas actually the disciples are elsewhere. And I don't know about how things feel like with you, but maybe a few weeks before that Easter Sunday, that Sunday when Jesus was crucified, if you look at those two believers, if we stepped into their shoes, I think they would have been so hopeful. They were excited that they had a king, that they had someone they were following, someone full of hope. And then now you see them, and they're walking in the other direction, walking away from what maybe God had for them. They were maybe downcast and maybe even a little bit disappointed. And I was thinking about that with our own lives. Do you ever feel like those believers? Maybe you believe, you hope so much for something, but then it doesn't happen. You have your eyes set on something, and then it gets taken away. I think there's many times when I look at my Christian faith, there's like an expectation that I accept Jesus into my life and that everything's going to be perfect. So I work at the moment in a company, an American company, and I work in operations. And so I'm looking a lot at graphs. So I thought I'd try and put it into a graph visualization for you. So maybe we can put my slide onto the screen. And And you can see my life and my hope expectation, I expect is it's just going to be flat, you know. I'm going to meet Jesus, I've accepted Jesus into my life, or I've got the job that I wanted, I don't know, I'm going to get married next week, everything's going to be sorted, you know. Life is now going to be perfect. I don't know, maybe I'm dreaming of something else, I'm dreaming of a certain gift or whatever. I think I'm going to get it, and then life is going to be perfect. It's going to just keep going, maybe even goes a little bit upwards in a trajectory. But the reality is that life isn't like this. That actually there is these ups and downs, and maybe we can bring up my second graph now. And when you see there's really this reality of life is going up and down and up and down. And I think we see exactly this with the believers here. They've had this huge high of Jesus is going to be the king. He's going to come and kind of take over the world. And what we're believing in is so strong. And then a few days later, they've lost their hope and they're at the bottom of that curve. And I think that is a really good illustration of our whole lives. I don't know what you're believing for, what you've believed for, or what you're believing for in the future. But actually, it's not this kind of flat way of doing life. And I was just thinking, well, when we look at the believers, we see that, from what I see, that they are so focused on their disappointments, on their problems, on what was going on, that actually they decided, hey, I don't think I can see Jesus. I'm not able to meet him. And I think in the same way as they start walking, they even start walking with Jesus. I don't know how many times we've maybe started also walking with Jesus and we don't recognize him. They're so downcast. Maybe I don't know how you don't recognize him if you've met him a few times, but you're walking down a street and you're walking with someone. Surely you're looking at their face. But I'm imagining they're walking to Emmaus, probably really walking down, not looking. But how are you not recognizing Jesus? And it also reminded me, as we are walking in those downward spirals in our life, Jesus is also walking with you. Jesus is walking, whether you see him or you don't see him, in the same way as the disciple or the believers here didn't recognize Jesus. He is walking with you. And at some point, he is going to be recognizable. He's going to break the bread in your life, and you're going to be able to see him. And I don't know if you can identify with that feeling of those disappointments, but I also don't know if you can recognize with those feelings of joy when we see Jesus again, when maybe we rediscover something, when we rediscover Jesus speaking to us, when we rehear him. Jesus, obviously reveals himself at the table. And I want to tell you that Jesus also meets us at the table. I think that Jesus makes a table for us in the same way as that table was laid out for him and for those disciples for him to be revealed. Jesus also meets us there. At that table, we are able to have community, we're able to have hope, we're able to know his peace. And actually, we only need to sit down. Sometimes it can feel so complex when we look at life, when we look at the challenges in life, when we look at the downward parts. But actually, Jesus comes, and it was so simple. They didn't have to do something really complex. They just sat down, and Jesus broke bread, and they saw him. And in the same way, I want to tell you that we can sit down at the table with Jesus with that same ease and meet him. He prepares a table for us. In Psalm 23:5, it says, Jesus prepares a feast for you, overflowing with blessings. And I don't know whether you feel like your table is overflowing with blessings. There are some days when I'm like, wow, I definitely see this, but other days when I don't. And so I would ask you, I don't know, I do know. How are we sitting at that table? How do we access the table with Jesus? How do I walk on that path with him and get to that point when I'm meeting and I'm sitting down and he's breaking bread and I'm seeing him? And I was thinking about, how do I know that I'm sitting at that table? And I was thinking, how do I do like a mental health check? How do I check myself? I'm thinking, how negative am I? How am I feeling? Am I feeling bitter? Am I feeling joyful? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling sad? I think when I look at those emotions, I can sometimes see, am I sitting at the table? Am I not sitting at the table? I would like to ask us also, who are we listening to? It says in this psalm, he prepares a table for us in front of our enemies, even. And actually, but in that time, we can still, we can still meet him, and our cup overflows with blessing. So, no matter what, who am I listening to? Do I see Jesus in my life? When I look at my life, if I look at myself 1 year ago, am I more joyful than I was before? Am I more generous? Am I more thankful? If I look at my life in this way, I think that can help me see where am I on that place. If we look at Zacchaeus, maybe you know this guy. He was a tax collector. He took and really robbed money from people. But Zacchaeus sat down at the table with Jesus, and from sitting down at the table, he decided, or he seemed to see what really mattered. And he ended up giving back 4 times what he'd cheated and gave away 50% of everything that he had. And that was just from sitting at the table with Jesus. And I think that challenges me when I go, wow, when I look at my life, am I being this generous? Am I really, with what I have, am I serving others? Am I helping others? Am I loving others? And I don't want to say that in a way that, okay, don't feel guilty that you're not, but I think it only comes really from when we're looking at Jesus, when we're sitting down and our eyes are fixed on him. It says there, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all things will be given to you. And I think, hey, are we looking at him? If I'm seeking someone, am I sitting down with Jesus, sitting down at the table with him in front of me, and allowing him to speak? I would just say, like, how can we sit at that table? How can I really know that Jesus is speaking to me? How can I make that time? And I would really say we need to pause. We need to sit. If we keep on running, we can't just sit and reflect. I run a lot. I love to run marathons, or I try to run marathons. But if I keep running all the time, my legs are never going to recover. I need, in the same way in my life, to take a pause, to reflect, to say, actually, hey, what is going on? How healthy am I? Some of those questions. Am I being joyful? Am I being loving to my partner? Am I, respecting my parents? Am I looking after my children well? All of those things. We need to take a pause and reflect. And I think, once we've paused and sat, I think we need to then focus our eyes on Jesus. We need to see I think in John 10:10 it says, you can have life and life to the full. So if we're pausing and reflecting and saying, oh, I'm not seeing that I'm having life and life to the full, why is that? I think that God gives you that opportunity, and us that opportunity to have life and life to the full, whatever that might look like. But are my eyes fixed on Jesus? Am I sitting down at the table with him and allowing him also to speak into me, and allowing him to speak through me? So that was my first point. Am I sitting at the table? Am I sitting at the table with Jesus? How am I sitting at the table with him? The second point I'd like to, and I only have 2 points, don't worry, it's not, is if we take a step back, we see this believer in one of the oh my goodness, I can't speak English anymore. I can't also speak German, but I can't speak English. And one of the translations that I read, one of the believers is called Cleopas, okay? And he's accompanied by a friend when he's leaving Jerusalem. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, the disciples, they stayed. And I wanted to ask you, as a second question, is who are you surrounded by? You see that the disciples, they stayed in Jerusalem. They stayed. I don't know what was going on in those rooms when they were talking, but I'm sure they were encouraging one another, or even like supporting one another in their sorrows. But they stayed. We then see these other believers who then say, actually, hey, no, like, and somehow or another, that community that they were in helped them lead along in the wrong direction. And then again, when we see then Jesus meets them and changes that community, they end up coming back to the community that they were in before. So I want to ask you, who are the people that you are surrounded by? When something goes wrong in your life, do our friends encourage us, or do they just help us wallow in our own problems? Or do they become bigger problems? When we are with others, am I also encouraging? Am I loving them? Am I being supportive? Am I being supported? I heard this is apparently a Russian proverb, but it says, if you tell me who your friends are, I'll show you who you are. And I think this reminds me a lot of Proverbs 13:20, which says, if you walk with the wise, we will become wise. But for a companion of fools suffers harm. Who are your friends? And so I want to ask you, who are your friends? Who are your community? Are we rooted in a community here? Am I rooted in a community of believers who help encourage me in my faith? Or am I not rooted? And how can I come to that is maybe what I'd like to then just talk through a little bit now. So actually I'm really blessed. So Angela and I are part of a church in Munich as well. We're part of it's called Hillsong. You may know it. It's fortunately or unfortunately sometimes in the news. But hey, we love Jesus, and we have an amazing community there. We support and look after a lot of the internationals. I think there's about 150 of us in Hillsong Munich. And we had this opportunity to have community. We don't have family, those who are living there in Munich, but we have a community. And we've been really blessed to be able to actually do life with people in the same way as we do life here. I was able to do life here for the first 18 years of my life. We're able to do life together. We're able to, in the highs, celebrate people. In the lows, live with people and do life with people. And I'm really always amazed at the church and how we can be that community for people. And when I look at Cleopas or whoever those believers were in that passage, I feel like that was what they were lacking. They were lacking this church family to say, hey, come stay here, let's hold fast. Like Jesus' promises were this. Let's hold on to this. And I really want to encourage you that, hey, first of all, you're in the right place. Whether you're watching online or you're here, you're in community. Maybe you feel separated or you feel whatever, but hey, cling on to this community, hold on to this community, invest in it, because this is the community where, we are becoming disciples, we are growing, we are learning, we are becoming more like Jesus. And that's amazing. And so I would like to also just challenge us or help us think about how do we either meet Jesus? Well, first of all, how did we meet Jesus at the table ourselves, which is by seeking him, pausing and looking at him. But also, how do we encourage others to join with him? How do we encourage others to enter into community, or how do we enter into community ourselves? I think there's a lot of thoughts. We can invite others, and we see already in the story, even the believers invited Jesus to come and stay with him. They said, hey, come and stay over. We also see, so we can invite others. We can also ask questions. And I think what's very interesting in this passage is that Jesus has walked with them and he asks them, what happened? I think in the version that I've read, Jesus asks the believers, what happened? Why are you so downcast? What's wrong? Jesus obviously knows what's happened. And I was just thinking, how many times in our life do I know what's happened, but I still need to ask the question of, hey, what happened? Can you explain it? Something that's part of our process is to explain, to share. Maybe we're going through something really hard, and sometimes we just need to be there for someone else, asking them, hey, what happened? Can you tell me more? Even if you know, Jesus knew what happened, but actually he allowed those disciples to share from their hearts where they felt, what was going on in their minds. And actually then from there, Jesus was able to move. So I really want to encourage you in the community that you're in, whether it be in this service, in this room, with people maybe in your community, in your families, ask them, hey, what's going on? Maybe you've been in church, what stood out to you today? Ask them, hey, how are you feeling about this? And let them really answer. I think us allowing others to express themselves where they are and actually walking with them through the journeys that they're in is actually so powerful. Sometimes we think that we need to fix something immediately to help someone, and that's the best way. I am really also the same. I think I have the same problem. If I hear a problem, I'm like, okay, I need to fix it. But actually sometimes we just need to let out that problem. We just need to share it, explain it, and then actually Jesus will do the rest. It's not on me to fix the problem. It's on Jesus. Jesus will help us fix that problem. So sometimes being part of community means that we can share, we can be open about the problems that we have, and do it with, and do those problems and those things in life with others. So in a moment, So kind of to summarize or to end, I just really want to remind you and tell you that God meets you where you're at. Whether you feel that you are really far away from him now, or you're really feeling close and you feel like, wow, Jesus is so near. And whether you feel like the ups and downs in life are too much, or you're really on a mountaintop and it's amazing, or you're on what feels like the valley low. Hey, you're in the right place. You're in this community. But Jesus meets you where you are right now. Jesus meets you, and all you need to do is take a pause, take a moment. Maybe it's in your morning. Take 5 minutes and just listen to him. Read his word. He wants to speak to you. He's made a table, and that table is always available to you, and you can meet him there. And so I would love for us to, as we close up, maybe the band would slowly come back up. And I'd love it if we could just play, just sing that last song again. Actually, we're not going to sing. I think we're just going to play. And I'd love for everybody here, including myself, just to have that moment now when we can just sit at the table with Jesus. I'd like us just to, it's going to be a slide which comes up and just gives us a couple of questions. But I'd like to think about, are you sitting at the table right now? Do you feel connected to God? Is your cup overflowing? And then how do you invite others to join the table? If you feel like, hey, I'm already connected to Jesus, I know it, hey, I'm good, then hey, that's fantastic. But how can you invite others to join you at that table? How can you invite others in? And so thank you for listening. And I really hope and pray that you are encouraged, and just encourage us to listen to God, because he has things for you in the everyday, in the highs, in the lows. And he wants to speak. So thank you. Let's reflect on those questions and we'll end there.
All things have passed away. Your love has stayed the same. Your constant grace remains the cornerstone. Things that we thought were dead are breathing in life again. You cause your sun to shine on darkest nights. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore.